Welcome, son of a bitch. Welcome to the long-awaited edition of Everybody Hates Cleveland, the podcast. After a 3-month hiatus, the boys are back. We're back, ready to talk Cleveland sports again, hopefully on a regular basis. We shall see. Today we're going to talk Cleveland Cavaliers, and in a later podcast talk a little bit about Johnny Manziel. Who wouldn't want to talk about Johnny Manziel? But before we get to that fun, we're going to talk Cleveland Cavaliers. Before we get to that, a couple of quick plugs. If you haven't checked us out yet and you happen upon this podcast, make sure you check out www.everybodyhatescleveland.com, brand new website, and not really brand new, up-and-coming website here in 2015. Michael Hattery, who's joining us today, Steve Orbanek, also joining us today, and I, as well as a few others, posting content on Cleveland sports and other things. We got some big things planned for 2015, so if you like the podcasts or hate the podcasts, join us at www.everybodyhatescleveland.com, and there you can find out a whole bunch of information about the podcasts and about everything else, including our Twitter feeds and everything else that will be bringing you Cleveland sports in the coming years. With that said, a segue into our participants today. Got to start with the newly married guy. We'll call him the Fat Cat today for reasons unknown. Michael Hattery, how is it being married? The last time we potted, I think you were newly engaged. That's how long it's been. Now you're a married guy. Now you're like Steve and I. Steve and I have no hope anymore. Now the three of us are all married. We can't live vicariously through you. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's an underrated experience. That's all I have to say. Keep myself out of trouble. Very underrated. Most underrated thing I've ever done.
I don't think that. I wonder if that's ever been described for marriage ever before in the history of life.
That's how life should be described.
How many people have gotten married and said that's the most underrated thing of my underrated thing I've ever done?
It's wise. It's wise.
Well, it took me a while to figure out if that was a big giant pause. Don't worry, I can edit that out.
using the adjective underrated, just a little unconventional, wouldn't you say?
Oh, completely. Not about convention. It's overrated.
I'm just throwing this out there. This has nothing to do with the podcast. I'm confident throwing this out there since I know nobody's listening to this. But I think my computer's lagging.
Yeah.
Steve, say something.
Yo.
Okay, so it's just my visual. All right. I guess I'm gonna have to lead in again because now this sucks. You guys okay with that?
Good. We had a good overrated, underrated conversation. That's a waste.
Fuck it. I'll just edit that in. I'll just cut all this shit out. All right, here we go.
Okay.
With all of that said, let's talk Cleveland Cavaliers basketball. Over the past few weeks, I've had to talk Steve Orbanek off a cliff as he was about to firebomb Quicken Loans Arena, as probably everybody else was as well. The Cavaliers playing very uninspired basketball with LeBron James injured. A lot of discussion about whether Kevin Love was the right fit, whether or not this team could even make the playoffs, believe it or not. Over the past week with LeBron James back, several moves the Cavaliers made, acquiring J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, and of course Timofey Mozgov. The Cavs have turned a corner, have won 5 games in a row, and actually been playing moderately inspired basketball. Gentlemen, as we segue into actual sports conversation, what are your initial thoughts on the Cavaliers' season as a whole? Let's not look at the 5 games yet. Let's talk season as a whole. With LeBron James coming back, are we where we expected to be? Is this team what we expected, even with these new players? What's going on with this team? Is there ever been anything like it in your memories?
Well, I'll say, I'll be honest. I think if you look at it, they're 24-40. I'm not gonna lie, that's a little disappointing. I think from where you would have thought they'd be at this point. So you're just over the midway point. Could you say after 44 games that really 4 games over 500 is what you expected? I don't know if many people would say that. Yet, with that said, I mean, I think I'm probably equally optimistic right now, as I would be if, let's say, right now they had a record of 30-15. 30-14 after 44 games. I mean, I think that number kind of has to be ignored. More or less, you got to look at the trends, how they're actually playing, and there's reason for optimism right now. But that said, yeah, of course, Jim. I think when this team came back, I think most people thought for sure this is going to be at least a 58 to 58 win team. Now, maybe they could still get 55. I think 58 is unlikely, obviously, given that they already have 20 losses. But I think, yeah, sure, the record. And it might not be the most impressive thing, but the way they're playing ball, the teams are beating. It's some inspiring stuff right now.
I mean, I think it's interesting. It depends how realistically we listen to LeBron say that it was going to be a process at the beginning of the season. Because I didn't think it was going to be this process. I thought if you put 3 of the top 20 players in the NBA on the floor, you could probably be better than 4 games over 500 at this point. But ultimately, we saw the talent around him, and once Verja went down, it was very thin. And we also saw a guy in Waiters who really seemed to hold this team back almost, which is unfortunate because I love my man, Dion Waiters. And what's happened is J.R. Smith is what we wish Dion Waiters could be, which is really, giving you reason for optimism that they finally fit the pieces right. So we have to wait on the sample. It's been tough to watch. There have been times where I've turned it off, and I never expected that. They're in a really good place right now, and I love the Hawks. I love what the Hawks are doing, but they're still set up to be one of the 2 or 3 challenging teams to represent the conference.
Do you think that it's ironic? So as we talk about these players, Mike, you mentioned J.R. Smith. Of course, everybody who comes to EHC knows how much we love Dion Waiters. But isn't it ironic that a player like J.R. Smith, who's been kind of an enigmatic player over the years, is a guy who's accepting of a role that Dion Waiters just never seemed to grab hold of? Is J.R. Smith, who is capable of throwing 20 down any night, the guy that could be, and we'll get into Mozgov too, because obviously he's made a massive impact, but just looking at players that fit roles, could J.R. Smith be the perfect kind of role player on this team, as enigmatic as he can be, that spark plug off the bench that we were expecting Waiters to be all these years?
Absolutely. I think... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think he's a very different player than Dion Waiters. And one of the points I made today, and I'm sure Mike would probably agree with this, 3 is a crowd, and that's a cliche, but it's also, an accurate one. And what I mean is, with Waiters, LeBron, and Irving, you had 3 ball-dominant players. So, sure, Waiters is a good player, very talented player, and he'll do things. You'll see things that he'll do where you'll be like, wow, literally about 2% of the NBA's players can do that. So that's why, we here at EHC have become so enamored with him. But that said, in this type of offense where you have the ball-dominant players in LeBron, Irving, you need a guy who's going to help with floor spacing. You need a guy who's going to be a pop-and-shoot type guy. Hello? That's J.R. Smith. I mean, criticisms aside, that guy there ain't a shot he doesn't like, and that's what he's perfect for. I mean, he's helped with spacing tremendously. He has helped with getting those open looks. He's keeping the defense honest. He's knocking down those shots, too. And, the other thing is, even when he doesn't knock them down, he never loses confidence, ever. And that's something I think Dion had struggled with a bit. That's, where you'd see, he'd be a little timid at times if he wasn't hitting right away. So, it's certainly a fit. And I'm not going to say that, Dion or J.R. Smith, one is better than the other, but one of them is certainly a better fit for Cleveland, and that's J.R. Smith.
Yeah, I'll ditto that because I think he did a terrific job, and I don't want to add too much on. But one other piece of the fit, I think, really is that Smith has shown, as enigmatic as he is, Smith has shown that he has an ability to give you some sort of 1 or 2 year shelf life if he's with a really good team in a functional situation. I think this is a pretty healthy situation because he respects the best player on the team. They're in a winning environment. He's done that with the Knicks when they're a winning team. So I think Smith has a shelf life, but I trust him for a year or two, and I think it's a really good fit.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we've got a 2-year window, and realistically, that's what the Cavaliers are looking at, potentially winning a title within the next 2 years. So if J.R. Smith can stay happy for those 2 years. The other side of that, of course, is LeBron James is probably the best player that he's ever played with, so it's possible that the guy that can rein him in is James, so we'll see how that carries over. It is interesting to see J.R. Smith kind of fold into that Dion Waiters role, as Waiters has been fairly successful in his move over to OKC, but that's for another day. The other obvious discussion point, aside from Iman Shumpert's high top fade, Steve, and we'll get into that in a second, is Timofey Mozgov. He's come into this a relatively unheralded player, but clearly is exactly what the Cavaliers have needed from day one, even with Anderson Varejao. He seems to have Anderson Varejao's motor, seems to go after the basketball the same way, but can protect the rim. Is Mozgov ultimately the guy that shapes this team into a true NBA title contender?
He certainly covers their biggest hole, which is absolutely essential. I mean, if you asked anybody, we had issues with Waiters as well as spot-up shooting in general, as Miller and Jones haven't shown anything or gotten the right PT. But, you know, if there was any criticism, is that there is no rim protection, and Mozgov offers that in spades. And he also offers some dependability and a lack of injury history or serious injury history. It's relatively limited, at least compared to Varejao. But it's concerning because he's essential. I think they are a clear title contender with him on the team. But what's after Mozgov, or the lack of what's after Mozgov, is still what's concerning about this team going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that very much so. You know, that's what I'm thinking as I watch the guy play. You know, what would happen if he gets hurt? You know, certainly I don't want to think that, but you know, I got to second what Michael says. With him, yeah, this is a contending team. You know, it's amazing how everyone. Do you notice how suddenly in this win streak, everyone's seeming to find their fit better, from Love to J.R. Smith to you know, even Irving to everyone, even, you know, Dellavedova, you know, all these guys they seem to be finding, you know, where they fit into this machine. You know, and I don't know if I'm sure you guys both saw. Did you guys see the comments from LeBron about Mozgov? I mean, wow, could this guy be gushing any more about a player? I mean, and what was so telling to me about that was LeBron knows everything he says is going to be put under a microscope, psychoanalyzed, you know. And that didn't stop him from basically saying, this is the best true big I've played with since Anderson Varejao. Now, he did quantify that, you know, and basically said, basically with the notion that when he refers to Love and Bosch, he's not thinking a true, you know, big. But nonetheless, I mean, that's high praise. And and the interesting thing was, too, LeBron seems to think this is barely the tipping point, folks. I mean, he seems to think that Mozgov's only going to continue to grow and get better. You know, that's interesting to see, and that LeBron would be so, I guess, you know, candid in his comments. And you know, but can you blame him? There's clearly a big difference since I've acquired the guy. You know, it's that Mozgov effect, I guess. I don't know. It's funny how suddenly with him, with J.R. Smith, hopefully with Shumpert, all these pieces are starting to fit. You know, I was like Mike too. I thought that no matter what, this team would be a little bit better than their record because, sure, put 3 top players there. You know, I expect great things, but it isn't about that. It's about a fit, and I kind of finally feel like these pieces are starting to fit together.
Could this? I keep coming back to this. Obviously, I have different players. This team really is a different team than it was 3 months ago. But I go back to discussion that we've had more than once about LeBron James, the rub-off that Shaq had on him in 2010, his last year in Cleveland. Shaq was a big proponent of waiting till the playoffs, getting in, and then letting the skill players take over in the playoffs. LeBron has been known to kind of follow that modality, or at least has wanted to as he's gotten older in his career. Is it distinctly possible that as we listen to terms like chill mode, and we watch this team play on a whole different level the past week than they have the rest of the season as they turn the corner at the halfway point, is it possible that this team, fronted by LeBron James, coming off an injury, with a brand new head coach, has taken it to another level now that we're heading towards the playoffs? Is chill mode legit? Is this something that the Cavaliers and LeBron James are pointing towards for the future? Are we going to see a second half team from now on?
I think if you looked at what LeBron said the last few years, and one of his concerns in Miami was that while Wade would get a lot of rest and while Bosh would, he was taxed and brutally taxed. A lot of rubber was burned off the tires, and he really, in the San Antonio series would comment about the fact that Popovich really protects his guys, gets them the rest necessary. They're not playing 40 minutes a game. They're playing 4 out of every 6 games. They're getting rest. So I think ultimately LeBron being in chill mode or whatever it is, I think it is fair to expect that they can kind of expect to improve, gel, and invest more heavily in increasing minutes, or ramping them up, preparing for the playoffs, without putting too much mileage on these guys. So absolutely, I think that's a fair expectation.
And with that said, I don't think LeBron, I think he would have chosen his words a little differently. Looking back, the whole chill mode thing, I think he realized another example of kind of foot in mouth, type of moment. Because, let's face it, we're talking about it here. Everybody's talking about it. And that's kind of been twisting this thing. But yes, certainly there's something to be said for doing that, for relaxing, so forth. And I to be honest, Jim, I wouldn't be surprised to see LeBron sit out a couple more games down the stretch. I mean, you think about it, we're just 2 games past the midway point, 3 games. I'm sorry. I could see that happening, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now that said, I'm looking at this still. I really think the Cavs, their goal from here on out should be to get one of the top 3 seeds in the conference. I think they can do that. They're not going to catch up to Atlanta, but they could catch up to the number 2 or 3 team. But still, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to change from this. I said to you, Jim, how enthusiastic we've been these last few games. I'm still concerned over the fact that this team, literally, their effort was not there at all when LeBron wasn't on the court. The fact is, as Mike said, he had turned off the channel a few games this year, turned the channel. I bet you I know which games he was doing that on. It was probably those last couple weeks when LeBron was out, because it was up. And, that said, that's something they're going to have to combat eventually, too, even if you want to get a higher seed. Because if you're going to rest LeBron, you want to be able to play without him there. That's why a big 3 is constructed, to be able to weather injuries, weather storms like that. And so far, my biggest concern is they've shown me nothing to suggest that they can do that.
Well, the game last night was, to me, the epitome of what the Cavaliers need to do. Get the lead, run it up, let the players take a break in the fourth quarter. That's when chill mode should take place. That said, chill mode, my friend, who wouldn't want to be in chill mode? Let's get down to it. We critique chill mode, but isn't that our ultimate goal? Come on. High top fade, chill mode.
Yeah, that's Nerlens Noel's in that all the time. Lives in chill mode.
He's been in chill mode for a long time, my friend. All right, I guess the elephant in the room, especially with Urbanic here at the pod, is Kevin Love's play this year. Interesting that Chris Bosh made special note at the beginning of the year discussing how difficult it would be for Kevin Love to find his way with LeBron James, and how difficult it was for Chris Bosh to do the same. How Bosh went from a premier elite player to a supporting player. Arguably, not even arguably, Kevin Love has struggled in that role. What looked like a perfect fit has turned into a massive kind of mess. Love taking probably too many shots from the outside, not being able to find his role in this new offense created by David Blatt. even in the past week, last night with the team dominating, Love not struggling but only scoring 9 points. Of course, that's not who you want to spend $15 million on. I know, Steve, you especially with the Wiggins trade had many questions about this. In hindsight, maybe not even in hindsight, where does Love go from here? Does he have a role on this team? Can he find his way, or is he a really expensive role player?
Well, I think it's. I'm going to be biased. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, it's hard for me to, as I sit here. I mean, I can't look at this objectively. I just can't. There's a lot of different layers to that. That said, it's interesting how I think this whole Love thing, and it might have happened a couple weeks ago, and Mike, you might have known, the Twitter basically erupted with the Wiggins Love thing. That said, as much as I love Wiggins, you look at the guys, still, Love is significantly better than Wiggins in that department, and Wiggins is still, a young rookie. Who's to say how he perform on this team? I don't know. I don't know if he's getting over 15 points per game in Minnesota. I don't know if there's room for those type of points there. It's hard though with Love because he'll show you glimpses of where you see, wow, that this is one heck of a talented basketball player. But at the same time, like you said, Jim, it seems like he can't really find his role in the offense, and maybe that's going to come better. I mean, I do think he has become a much more efficient player since they've gotten Mozgov, and since everything's kind of come together. And what I mean that is he's not scoring as many points, but he seems to be shooting better. The shots he is taking are a little better. But yeah, it does seem like it's a little bit of a challenge when the offense isn't running through him as it had, for so many years in Minnesota. It's just, it's not. I guess the best term to use is underwhelming. I can't say that he's really shocked me as that he's played terribly. And even if you look at his shooting percentages, they're not awful compared to some of his other career years. The defense has been atrocious, but we knew that going in. I don't think everyone knew he was a below-average defender at best. But that said, this was the guy who, spacing-wise, was supposed to flourish with James. That's what everyone thought. They thought this was basically the four that LeBron has needed, and they thought, he'd be an upgrade over even playing with Bosh. And I don't know if he has. I really, well, in fact, no, I would say he hasn't been. It's just been underwhelming. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had asked me which of the big three would have had the hardest time adapting to the additions, it would be Kyrie Irving. And Irving's been incredibly impressive in terms of adapting his play style. We've seen that ultimately his ball dominance the last few years has been more a result of the team around him than his personal predisposition. So that's been really positive. Love, I think it's really, Wiggins, he's had some what look like surface level really good games, but statistically he's really struggled. Really struggled to the point that if you go back and comparatively analyze his per as well as his usage rate, it's concerning that he will ever become a legitimate star player. He may become a very good player, but it seems like it's the way we look at things statistically, his ceiling is a little lower than we might have thought. I love Wiggins, wanted to keep him around. I'm very concerned about not only Love right now, but Love staying. I think the Cavs are in this situation where they may have given up Wiggins for a year of Love and he's gone, and I think that's really unfortunate. Him gelling, him becoming comfortable in this offense, and Blatt helping to make him comfortable in this offense is really important. And I do think that while Blatt's helped to transition LeBron and Kyrie's roles, I think he's really struggled to use Love efficiently. And maybe that's Love and maybe that's Blatt, but I think there's a little interplay that has to happen. And hopefully during this period while they're gelling, starting to look better, starting to find roles that'll change.
Yeah, in an email exchange, something that Bill Simmons wrote, and Simmons over the past year has been talking about how fun Kevin Love was to watch last year with Minnesota Timberwolves. He is an extremely fun player to watch when he is the preeminent offensive player on that team. That said, that's not the case here in Cleveland. He's the third option, and I think that's a struggle. you have to wonder as the season progresses, can they figure out a way for them to share the ball, for them to allow Kevin Love to get into the flow of the game? I think what's mostly been disconcerting for me has been the drop in rebounds. I would be perfectly content with a 12-point, 15-rebound guy from Kevin Love, especially if he could start hitting key shots. So perhaps, guys, do you think that he could find a way to become a more offensively skilled Dennis Rodman on this team? At the end of the day, wouldn't that be more effective than necessarily a 20-point, 10-rebound guy? Not that that would hurt, but could he find a role where an acceptable role where he's a guy who can get 15, 16 rebounds a game and then pop out to a 3 and bury a 3 every now and then?
I just don't know if he's – I don't know if he's a natural rebounder to be able to do that. You know what I mean? My fear is, you see him. I never really notice him getting great offensive boards like I see with Tristan Thompson or I've seen with Mozgov. And now, granted, limited sample size for Mozgov, but I just don't know if he has the physicality of, say, a Dennis Rodman that you mentioned. I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be I'd be happy with that because with Irving and LeBron, let's face it, we don't really need Love scoring. I mean, you don't need 3 guys to be scoring over 20 points a game. It's a nice luxury, sure. But is it essential to winning? I would say no. I mean, that's just my take. But I think that'd be a great feeling. And it's great thinking. I don't know if he's capable of that. Let me pose this question to you guys both. Then, what the interesting thing is, as Mike you mentioned, is I agreed about that. I thought Irving was going to struggle so much. And he's come in, he's adjusted quicker than LeBron and Dwayne Wade did in Miami, significantly so. It's been very impressive. Anything negative I said about Irving, I got to take back. That said, we know it's been a struggle with Love. So how do you fix it? If you're Blatt, if you are, Lou, how do you fix this? How do you get Love more integrated in the offense? Do you run plays for him? Do you run ways to get him open looks? What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, how do you fix this?
Well, I think
Mike, run with it.
I think Mozgov and I think that you're going to see Love's rebounding totals suppressed a little bit. He is a terrific rebounder. He's not an overwhelming rebounder in the eye test. But at the end of the day, when you look at the stat sheet, he's a very impressive rebounder. And so that's the kind of thing. Tristan Thompson is something that when he gets an offensive rebound. He crashes the boards. Love is a very, I don't know, there's something about the manner in which they collect rebounds which is really different.
He's a smarter rebounder. He's a spot rebounder. He goes to where people aren't and gets boards that way. Whereas Thompson just goes over you or through you. Yeah,
absolutely. He's an intellectual rebounder in my opinion. So ultimately, I think you're going to see
he's made a new category, my friend. Run with that one. An intellectual rebounder.
But I would say that, ultimately his rebounding will be suppressed a little bit with Mozgov there, but I think they can complement each other really well. I think that, if Love can get a little more space, even though he has a lot, I think them playing around each other, Love moving inside and outside a lot, he's a terrific passer. If they can find spots for him, I think, it takes 1 week, too, I think, with Love. I think he's someone who he came in here. It took them a while to adapt, and I think it just takes 1 week. I think it takes a couple of games to get Love going. Sometimes that's all it is. You have 3 pieces that have really struggled to fit, more than that really, and Love just has to have a week or 2 where he really gets comfortable, and then it just changes.
Before I address that, Steve, before I get into that, I mean, could it be a health issue?
I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility. We know he's had an achy back. And that's fair, I mean, it's so funny how, case in point, LeBron. I mean, it was funny how everyone was saying he doesn't look like the same LeBron. He just doesn't look like the same LeBron. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. The guy was in hell of pain. You could clearly tell what we've seen these last 2 weeks. That's the same old LeBron. And that said, a hurting LeBron is still better than what? What would you say? 97% of the NBA? So, maybe that is the case with Love as well. Maybe I guess to that point, Jim, do you think it would benefit him to take, say, a week off, especially with LeBron back now, kind of carrying the offense, or because Love is still not really integrated into this, do you think, he's got to be out there playing every night so he can, get a full feel for this offense and this team?
Yeah, well, and I think that's what I was heading towards. I was hoping almost that they were going to put him on the bench for a couple of weeks to let him get healthy. Perhaps they're waiting for maybe they were waiting for this kind of run to do that. When I was thinking of it, they had lost a few games in a row. That said, offensively, how you get him incorporated into this team, he's been taking far too many outside shots. I will say this, over the past week, and we've talked about this, Steve, he's been a lot more efficient, maybe trying to find his role in this offense. He seems extremely content winning basketball games and fitting in. I don't know how this plays into the long-term future of this team. And the team makeup right now, I think it's key, and it's important that he plays that type of role. The unknown in this season right now is Kevin Love. If come April, Kevin Love is Kevin Love, the Cavs are immediately a top 5 team in the league, are immediately a title contender, and immediately really hard to beat. That's the big question. We still don't know how that's going to play. He immediately makes that front line a little more deep, especially if he's playing at an elite level. And he's just not been doing that. So there's the unknown. I mean, there's the trade deadline trade. Can Kevin Love figure it out? And can David Blatt earn some of that money and figure out a way to do that? Iman Shumpert made his debut, high top fade. I don't know if we want to talk about the fade or what he brings to this team. Likely pushes J.R. Smith into that role as the sixth man. Moves Dellavedova way down. Iman Shumpert, I mean, this is a guy the Cavs looked at last year. This is a defensive two, a guy who can play swing as well. Is Shumpert a guy that, as we see him take on more minutes, he played really well last night. Is Shumpert a guy that the Cavs this year and in years to come might look at as one of those really key role players, especially defensively? Is he going to help this club become a better defending team?
He's already brought good style to the club. I'll tell you that.
I know you've been waiting for a high top fade for a long time.
I have.
A quick thing before I talk to Shumpert too that just kind of frames our offensive discussion. I think one of the positions we're in that's kind of humorous is that we all notice that they haven't gelled yet. We haven't seen a lot. We've seen LeBron, who's been hurt and imperfect, Love, who seems to struggle. But when the three of them are playing in basketball games, they're either the second or very, very close to being the number 1 team in offensive rating in the NBA. So with Kevin Love looking pretty messy for a large portion of the season and LeBron injured, they're still one of the 3 best offensive teams in the NBA. So I think, obviously, and with a rim detector, their defensive rating is going to improve. So I think they're in awesome shape. But when it comes to Shumpert, I think he could be a really good role player. You need this. There are so many different little things you need, and you never know that you need them until you're in the playoffs and you're in the title and Steph Curry gets really hot and Kyrie can't shut him down and you need to put in Iman Shumpert before, is playing Curry. Or, there are so many matchups where you need a guy like Shumpert. The NBA is so deep at point guard, and it's not very deep at shooting guard, but it is very deep at point guard. And having a guy who can be a legit stopper on point guards, or at least frustrating and get in their face, is really, really essential. So I think it's a nice little piece to add on to that spot-up shooter you got, and I think the Cavs did really well the last couple of weeks.
So as we start to wrap this up, as we look forward, you mentioned shooting guard, Mike. Of course, rumors all year about Ray Allen. They've kind of subsided over the past few weeks. I still think the Cavaliers aren't done. Might we see Ray Allen join this team? Steve's made note several times in his work, in his writing at EHC, as well as conversations behind the scenes, that they could use a backup point guard as well. Or could they go and try to add to this front line by bringing in a guy like D'Alembert? What do you guys think? I mean, are the Cavs done making moves, or could we see a bench player join this team, such as Ray Allen, or Dallenberg, or even a point guard down the line to maybe make Dellavedova that 10-minute player that Steve's wanted all year, that many of us see him being down the line. What do the Cavs do? Are we done seeing moves, or do we have one or two more in the offing here in the next month?
Well, I do think another move is definitely coming, Jim. Now to be fair, now I have been somewhat critical of Dellavedova, but that's very much because I think he was overexposed. Now, as you and I have talked,
dead on though. That was dead on, Steve. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of people were irritated by you saying that, but look at you wrote that piece 2 months ago. Look at what's happened since.
Well, I think it was just. I like Dellavedova as much as anyone, but I mean, I think he's best when he's playing 10 to 12 hard minutes per night, and really that's about it. And then that's, hopefully I think with Shumpert, these acquisitions, they kind of help that, But I think Ray Allen, if he comes back, I think he's going to Cleveland. You saw LeBron, we heard, met with him while he was away. He's kept in contact with Mike Miller and James Jones. My concern there, as we've talked, Jim, is basically... So you have James Jones, you have Mike Miller. Ray Allen, he offers, obviously he's a better shooter, and to be fair, Ray Allen averaged 9.6.
Is he at this point? Is he?
Well,
I mean,
what's
what do
left?
we want?
What's left in there? There's nothing left in Mike Miller, and we think there's going to be something left in Ray Allen.
Well, you're right, but let me throw this out to you guys. So
sorry. I didn't mean to go off. It's just you mentioned Jones and you mentioned Miller and Allen, and the more time goes by, I can't figure out if Allen's going to be healthier or he's going to be just like he's going to be sitting on the bench thinking, why the hell am I here?
Well, I think he would bring more to the table than, say, James Jones, which, if he brings anything to the table, he's bringing more to the table than James Jones. Now, that said, I'll say
he's
this.
a good-looking man, James Jones.
I mean, is he? That said, here's who I want, and I'd like to hear both your thoughts. I still think we need a backup point guard, a guy who could play both guard positions would help. To me, the logical fit is Jordan Farmer. Here's another reason why. Who did he play for 2 years ago? But Maccabi Tel Aviv and David Blatt. He was not a fit with the Clippers, but let's be honest. This was a guy who he had a pretty good season just 2 years ago with the Lakers, a real good season. He averaged as a backup point guard, to Steve Nash. That's a guy to me. The other thing there that helps is, and I think this is something that has not been said about Mozgov enough, is you bring a guy in like Mozgov in who trusts David Blatt, that immediately gives credibility to Blatt. That helps Blatt's relationship with the other players, and I think that's another thing that Farmer could do. I don't know. That's my take. They're going to add someone. It's going to eventually happen. I think Farmer might make the most logical sense, but that said, I think it's probably going to be Ray Allen.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece. I like that. I'd like to see Farmer come in probably more than Allen at this point. The one thing I wish is that the Cavaliers could have retained enough assets to go get Jeff Green. I think Jeff Green would have been a really good fit for this Cavs team. But
I'd have been giddy. I'd laugh giggling like a schoolgirl. Of course, I do that anyway.
Any of them. Add any of them. Bring anybody in.
Well,
the bench is thin. It's Lil Duval. Bring in Lil Duval. I don't care.
Well, you know where I'm going then with this, Michael.
Sessions!
I knew it. See, that's where I thought we were starting. I can't believe it took us this long. But I got to add something before we talk about Ramon Sessions and his future with the Cavs. The Cavs over the past 4 or 5 days have been inquiring about a lot of players. Farmer's one of them. Rumors about Farmer. An article came out a couple of days ago about the Cavaliers talking to Ray Allen specifically. What would happen if they brought in? Is there room for them to bring in Farmer and Ray Allen? And with that being said, they had a roster spot available prior to today. They just sent Joe Harris down to Canton, opening up a second spot. Is it possible we could see two of these guys? League minimum. I mean, if they're going to sign league minimum, I mean, why not?
Bring them both. I mean, that's,
that would block Ramon Sessions.
You could, well, are the Kings, is Ramon Sessions...
Did you notice? See, the pause. Well, wait a second.
Well, the thing is Ramon Sessions even on the market? Are the Kings trying to deal him? I mean, I don't know if that's... The guy is playing 17 minutes per game for the Kings. He was out for a bit, but they're not making use of him, They might as well. They got Darren, what's his name, Collison, and Ray McCallum. They're not even using the guy. They need to waive Sessions because they're not going anywhere this year, and we'll just sign him.
Are you proposing a Dellavedova trade for Ramon Sessions?
Well, I don't know. I think I don't think the salary would match up there. This stuff is complicated. What I do know is this: somehow, some way, Sessions got to get on this team, no matter what. He has to get on this team, and I don't know how to do that, but that's my wish list.
I think Bynum's a big possibility. It looks like Will Bynum's a pretty distinct possibility. Yeah, I would love to. They need another guard. They need another wing guy. They need somebody to be Mike Miller when Mike Miller was good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The bonus about today, as opposed to doing this podcast a week ago, is we're actually talking about the 8th or 9th spot on the bench, whereas a week ago we were probably ready to pull out bazookas, fire Blatt, send LeBron on his way, and hope for a new Cavaliers team down the line. So funny how a week changes our mentality. We're going to wrap things up here, gentlemen, as we close up shop on our long-awaited return to the airwaves. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to plug? I'm going to start with Steve. I'm going to put you on the spot, dude, because you always put me on the spot. Is there anything that you would like to plug today? And I did not plug your piece already, so that's still out there available.
Yeah,
and it also buys you, Mike, time, so you can think of one.
I'll plug right now, as Jim mentioned earlier, everybodyhatescleveland.com. Give the site a gander. 10 observations, regular Saturday piece. There's some maybe minorly thought-provoking content in there, but check it out because it's written by me. You'll get my take on some of this stuff going on with the Cavs. Some of the stuff we already discussed. Also a take on, Johnny Manziel. While you're at it, also, since I'm gonna now really put Mike Hattery on the spot too, because if he was gonna plug his own stuff, I'm gonna step on his toes. Mike Hattery made a triumphant return to EHC this week with 2 pieces. Danny Salazar, excellent piece.
Took over the site.
He did. He said take over, NWO style. It was outstanding. The Salazar piece, very good. Excellent piece, kind of looking at why Salazar could be a breakout candidate for the Indians this year. So very, very good piece. In addition to that, also did a nice piece on Lonnie Chisenhall yesterday, who not my favorite Indian, as everyone probably knows, but it was a compelling piece. I enjoyed reading it, and I'll tell you what, it's helped me have more of an open mind in regard to a big lawn headed into this season. So, Michael Hattery, check out his stuff. Check out my piece today. everybodyhatescleveland.com.
Michael, hard. He just plugged like half the internet. What's left?
Yeah, I don't know what else to plug. I'll say that I think from what I've heard, Primo is going to come out with some more premium Primo stuff this week. Take a look at that in the next few days. Definitely read the Salazar piece because I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it's important to understand how good he already is.
Totally agree. As I close up shop here, I'm going to, of course, plug our website, www.everybodyhatescleveland.com. Join us there. You can hit us up on the the Google Plus site, which is plus.google.com/plus Everybody Hates Cleveland. You can hit us up on Twitter. Here we go, Steve. You ready for me to butcher this? At EVRYBDY hates CLE. How about that? Or you can follow us at our Facebook page. Follow us at them all. Have a party. Have an Everybody Hates Cleveland party when you listen to this. Hit us up on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Everybody Hates Cleveland. Join all of them. Get our full content because, oh, do we have full content. My plug is going old school. It's not really a plug. I grew up a huge baseball fan in the 70s. Baseball players were my superheroes. Last night, major hit to Major League Baseball. Ernie Banks passed away. Cleveland fans can appreciate a guy like Ernie Banks. Spent his entire career playing for the Cubs, a very bad baseball team at the same times as we were following a very bad Cleveland Indians team. Banks passed away last night at the age of 83. Not necessarily one of my heroes, but certainly of that 1950s era, the greatest era of all time. He won an MVP award back-to-back in 58 and 59 when Willie Mays and Hank Aaron were in their primes. And if that doesn't say how good a player Ernie Banks was, playing for one of the worst teams in the league, then nothing else does. So my push, my plug is hashtag Let's Play 2. It's always a beautiful day, Ernie Banks, and now you can play 2 all day long. So R.I.P. Ernie Banks. Gentlemen, it's good talking baseball, good talking basketball, good talking sports with you guys. We'll be back in a little bit talking Johnny Manziel. Here's to Everybody Hates Cleveland. Here's to Cleveland sports.